just next door. It all started when John was browsing through his local library's archives for a research project he was working on. He came across an old newspaper article about a young woman who had been murdered in his town decades ago. The case had never been solved, and the killer was still at large. As he read through the article, something caught his eye. A name he recognized. It was a name he had seen before, but he couldn't quite place it. He did some digging and soon realized that the name belonged to one of his neighbors, a man he had exchanged pleasantries with on occasion. One day, when his neighbor was away, John sneaked into his neighbor's house and searched through his things. After some digging, John stumbled upon a box of old photographs in the attic. He recognized the young woman in the photographs as the victim from the cold case. John's heart raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. He couldn't believe that his neighbor could be the killer, but the evidence was too compelling to ignore. He had to act fast. He called the police and arranged to meet with them the next day. That night, John lay in bed, unable to sleep. His mind was racing with thoughts of the case. He felt like he was in over his head, but he couldn't turn back now. He had to see this through to the end. The next day, John met with the police and shared his findings with them. They were skeptical at first, but as he presented more evidence, they began to take him seriously. The evidence consisted of a series of photographs that John had found in his neighbor's attic. They showed his neighbor with the victim, a young woman who had been murdered. In some of the photos, his neighbor was seen embracing the victim, while in others, he was seen following her. Furthermore, John had discovered a newspaper clipping from around the time of the murder, which had been marked and circled in red pen by his neighbor. The article detailed the murder and contained information that only the killer would have known. As John continued to present his evidence, the police grew more and more convinced of his neighbor's guilt. They launched an investigation, and before long, they had enough evidence to arrest him. John couldn't believe it. He had never imagined himself as a detective, but here he was, the accidental detective, responsible for cracking a notorious cold case. As the trial approached, John found himself in a dangerous game of cat and mouse with the killer. He received threatening messages and even found his car vandalized one morning, but he didn't let it deter him. He knew he had to keep going, keep fighting for justice. As the trial began, John sat in the courtroom watching as the killer was brought in. He felt a mix of fear and satisfaction. Fear for what the killer might do if he was found guilty and sent to prison. Satisfaction for finally bringing closure to the victim's family. The trial lasted for several days, and in the end, the killer was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. John breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over. As he walked out of the courtroom, he was approached by a woman. She introduced herself as the victim's sister and thanked him for his help in solving the case. John felt a lump in his throat as he realized the impact his actions had on this family. He turned to leave, but the woman called out to him. "Hey, John, you might have missed your calling. You would make a great detective." John laughed. "I think I'll stick to my day job, but who knows, maybe one day I'll stumble upon another case." Digital detox. Lila had always been the type of person who loved to stay connected. Whether it was through social media, text messaging, or video calls, she always found herself glued to her phone, scrolling through her feeds and responding to messages almost constantly. But lately, she had started to feel like something was missing. She realized that she was spending so much time online that she was losing touch with the world around her. She wasn't spending as much time with her friends and family as she wanted, and she felt like she was missing out on real-life experiences. So she decided to take a break from technology for a week to see if it would help her reconnect with the people and world around her. The first day was tough. She felt like she had lost a limb when she left her phone at home while going for a walk. But as the week went on, she started to appreciate the simple things in life. She went for walks, read books, and even started cooking her meals from scratch. But as much as she was enjoying her unplugged life, she found herself constantly craving her phone. She would reach for it unconsciously, only to realize that it wasn't there. She missed her friends and the constant stream of information that came with being connected. On the last day of her experiment, Lila was feeling a little down. She had realized just how addicted she was to technology, and she wasn't sure if she could go back to her old ways. She decided to take a walk in the park to clear her head and reflect on her experience. As she walked, she noticed a group of kids playing together. They were laughing and chasing each other, completely oblivious to the world around them. Lila smiled at the sight, remembering how much fun she used to have playing with her friends when she was younger. Suddenly, one of the kids looked up and spotted her. "Hey, do you want to play with us?" he asked, grinning from ear to ear. Lila hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure if she was ready to jump back into the real world just yet, but then she remembered why she had taken this break in the first place. She wanted to reconnect with the people around her and experience life in the moment. "Sure," she said, grinning back at the kids. She joined in their game, feeling a sense of joy and freedom that she hadn't felt in a long time. After a while, the kids had to go home, and Lila found herself walking back to her apartment with a newfound sense of purpose. She knew that she didn't want to give up technology completely, but she also realized that she needed to find a better balance between her online life and her real-life experiences. When she got home, she picked up her phone and looked through her social media feeds. But instead of feeling the same addictive pull that she used to, she felt more in control. She knew that she could put her phone down and experience life in the moment, and that was a liberating feeling. As she lay in bed that night, she smiled to herself, knowing that she had found a new appreciation for the world around her. She had learned that it was possible to be connected and still be present, and that was a valuable lesson that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. "I'm glad I took that break," she whispered to herself. "I feel more alive than ever." Diary of an Immortal. My name is Jack, and I am immortal. It all started when I was just a young man, and I was involved in a terrible accident. I should have died, but instead I found myself waking up days later in a hospital bed, completely healed. At first I thought it was a miracle, but as the years went on, I realized that something strange was happening. I never aged, and I never got sick. I watched as my friends and family grew old and died, while I remained the same. At first, I tried to keep my immortality a secret, but it became harder and harder as time went on. Eventually, I had to face the fact that I was different from everyone else. That's when I discovered the truth about the secret society of immortals. They had been around for centuries, manipulating history and events to their advantage. They had seen empires rise and fall, wars fought and won, and they had always been there, pulling the strings behind the scenes. I first met them in the early 1800s when I was still trying to understand my own immortality. I was approached by a man named Alexander, who told me that he knew my secret and that he could help me control it. He invited me to join their society, and I agreed. Over the years, I learned more about the society and their goals. They wanted to ensure their own survival and protect their interests at all costs. They had infiltrated governments, businesses, and even religious institutions, always working behind the scenes to influence the world. But I began to see the darker side of their actions. They were willing to sacrifice anyone and anything to achieve their goals, including innocent lives. They saw themselves as superior beings, and anyone who got in their way was expendable. I began to question my involvement in the society, but I was too deep in to just walk away. I knew too much, and they would never let me leave alive. So I stayed, hoping that I could make a difference. Years went by, and I watched as the world changed around me. Wars were fought and millions died, while the society continued to manipulate events from the shadows. But something was different this time. The world was becoming more interconnected, and it was becoming harder for the society to maintain their secrecy. Then, one day, I received a message from a fellow immortal, a woman named Sophia. She told me that she had discovered a way to break the society's hold on us. She had found a way to make us mortal again. At first, I was skeptical. I had been living with my immortality for so long that I couldn't imagine life any other way. But then I thought about all the pain and suffering that the society had caused over the centuries. Maybe it was time for a change. So I joined Sophia and a small group of other immortals who wanted to break free from the society's hold. We called ourselves the Mortals Awakening, and we worked in secret, gathering information and resources to bring down the society. It wasn't easy, but we eventually succeeded. We exposed the society's secrets to the world, and they were forced to go into hiding. The world was shocked to learn of their existence, But they were also relieved to know that they were no longer being manipulated. In the end, I decided to take Sophia's offer and become mortal again. It was a strange feeling, knowing that I would now age and eventually die. But it was also liberating. For the first time in centuries, I felt like a part of the world rather than an observer. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notification and leave a like. Until the next journey, thanks for watching.